Welcome to Turnanock, the once beloved homeland of the Fae. It's here Philo reveals his deepest secret to Vignette, and we finally get to see the truth behind their relationship. Welcome everyone, this is Carnival Row.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Hello, all of you AfterBuzzers. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Carnival Row After Show here on AfterBuzz TV. I'm Veronica Valencia, and joining me again for episode 3, he is a producer here, and he also edits the awesome short-form content you get to see. Everyone, welcome Vito again.
Well, hello again. It's time to get into Carnival Row. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited because we're obviously going to be talking all about Philo being a half-blood, and there's been a lot of mystery around Vignette and Philo's relationship. We're definitely going to get into that. We're also going to get into the Pact because we got a little backstory there. We also have some news to share with the audience later, and Vito will be taking us down Mythical Row where we learn about another creature. But before we get into any of that, Vito, I really want to know what you thought about this episode.
Oh, I love this part in any fantasy, in any other world story where I finally get to see the actual thing that happened before the apocalypse happened.
Yep.
This was so cool. Oh my gosh. Getting to see all the bases, getting to see the fairy town, getting to see everything that was happening there and how the people lived, getting to see the sacred library that they have there. Oh, it blew my mind. It really blew my mind. What did you what was your favorite part of seeing this new world?
Oh my gosh. I mean, honestly, my favorite part might just be kind of what we learned this episode, and we're going to get into that. I love this episode. And for those of you watching on YouTube and listening on iTunes, just so you know, I have watched further ahead, and Vito is watching as we go. So I can safely say that episode 3 is by far my favorite episode, and I think it's just because I love the aesthetic. I love something about fantasy and snow. I don't know why. It just looks beautiful. All the nature covered in snow. I love it. And I also really love this episode because I think we've gotten bits and pieces of our characters, but I think this episode really establishes the foundation and the motivations behind Philo and Vignette. And, I would love to go right into Philo's big reveal because he is a half-blood.
Oh my god, I actually I don't know if this was just me not really seeing it coming because of any other reason, but I did not see it coming that he was going to be a half-blood until they started getting into the whole story about the original half-blood, the way that developed. I was so surprised and so happy. I mean, it gets into something a little weird with the commentary that they're trying to get across, that he's empathetic to the Fae, but only kind of because he was a half-blood. But overall, I thought it was an incredible reveal, and I'm so glad to find we didn't have to wait an entire season to see what Vignette was talking about when she was like, I'll tell them, and he was like, no, don't do it. I'm so glad I didn't have to wait for that, and that it was something that was really actually a good payoff. Did you feel as though you saw this coming at all?
No, even though when I first initially watched this episode, I didn't think he was a half-blood. I thought the secret Vignette was talking about had to maybe be something he chose the Fae over the Burgishmen during the war, and that's obviously very bad. That would be betrayal and all that. I thought it was something along the lines of that, but I love the fact that he's a half-blood because can I go on an unapologetic 60-second rant real quick?
Absolutely, but real quick, I just want to say this is live, and I am watching the live chat, just so you all know. Go ahead.
Awesome. I watch a lot of fantasy media. I also watch a lot of anime, and I love storylines revolving around half-bloods because I just love the storyline. I love the struggle of them trying to find their way in the world, whether, a lot of half-bloods feel, I belong in neither world. Some people think, hey, you got a place in both worlds. You're going to be the one to bring us together. And I love watching the struggle of how they kind of cope with, not knowing where to go in life. It's just always fascinating to me.
Absolutely. And I'm very excited to see kind of where Philo ends up going with his choice of if he has to choose whether he's living in one world or the other world, because in my opinion, he's in a very unique position. And I mean, obviously we see later he's not the only one that's really in his unique position, but it's such a different circumstance than any of the other men. And you can kind of see it in the way that he interacts with his like superiors, and even the superior of the Burgishmen is like, yeah, these are all just a bunch of animals, which I found so messed up. I was when he called the fairies animals, I was like, excuse me. But like generally I understand where you're coming from with that love for that, because so many storylines pull it, but I think this one really pulled it off. I don't know.
There are two specific storylines in this episode that probably is the reason why it is my favorite. And to some people, and I'll get into this a little bit later when we talk about the second one, but some people might think, oh, certain storylines like this in fantasy can be cliche or, you know, very predictable. Regardless, I will always love a story about a half-blood. I just always love watching their journey. The second one we will talk about when we kind of dive deeper into Philo and Vignette's relationship. But yeah, just like...
and can we talk about Darius at all real quick, or do you want to save that for the end?
I would love to save that.
Gotcha, that's fine. Yeah. It's just, it made me so happy. But yeah, well,
actually, if you want, we could talk about that right now, because we can also talk about the Pact.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the Pact attack and Darius. Well, let me talk about Darius first. Let's talk about Darius first. I knew that something was going to happen after he came up from that attack and was just like, no, I'm fine, I didn't get bitten, whatever. But I was confused a little bit about the time skips that they were taking, because how long before this did this infect him? How long was it that Philo ended up catching him that he was like, oh yeah, it only happens every now and again, once a month, and so like, and I've done this enough that it makes me feel free? Like, how much time do you think passed between the attack, the original, I'm gonna say werewolf attack, because I don't know how else to explain them, between that and like when he finds Darius out in the wild? How long do you think?
I would say maybe a couple of months, only because I would also think Vignette and Philo would need time to develop the relationship, and
yeah.
I would think it would need to be a few months, especially with how standoffish and non-trusting she was toward him.
I was also curious about that, but it's funny because while I was watching it, I didn't get a sense that I was confused about the time for that relationship, because it seemed, I liked the development of Philo and of Vignette, of the book. The basically it was what was it? Trip to the Moon is the original film. That's not the name of the book that they had, but it's like basically the same story of a man goes to the moon, like Journey to the Moon or whatever. I thought that was so beautiful, and I was just ecstatic that it actually ended up getting Vignette interested. And that Philo was able to talk to her about it, and they were both like real mushy about it. It was good. It was good stuff. How did you feel about the book? Did it feel like forced at all to you? I don't know.
We'll put a pin in that, because I do want to go into that, but I do want to kind of expand on Darius just a bit and the Pact.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
But no, it has to have been a few months after he was bitten. But so obviously, like, we get to see the Pact, and they said a very interesting comment where they're like, Pact Fae looks the same as normal Fae.
Yeah.
So that was interesting, because, there's obviously Fae who are choosing, hey, it's probably easier to be part of the Pact than it is to stand and fight with the Fae and the Burgishmen.
Which basically is wild, because you do not see any Pact Fae yet. I haven't seen it. No. Not in this episode. All we saw were the guys in the masks and the Zeppelins that were dropping the bombs, which, by the way, did not expect that type of technology to be in the fairylands. I did not expect them to have airships going around.
Well, what do you mean that kind of technology in the fairylands? Like that kind of technology in Carnival Row in general, or that kind of technology in Turnanock?
Specifically in Turnanock, I mean. Like, I kind of got the feeling for it with the kind of World War I style, World War II style kind of vibes that they're giving off, but I just did not expect 3 airships to come out of nowhere armed with Gatling guns and bombs to take out Turnanock, to take out this town. But back to Darius, I thought that was really interesting on how he kind of like had this secret that could not be revealed easily unless literally anybody found him, like Philo did. And I guess he's right, and it pushed Philo a little like close to heart, because obviously Philo was like, oh yeah, I guess if they knew, they would probably kill me too.
Yeah.
But it really makes me wonder if they would have actually killed Darius if they found out, and if that means that if he's in jail, did they find out, and does he kill someone? Do they find him and then he turns back into a human, like we already saw happen when they actually found the werewolves at first? When they killed them, they turned back into the Pact humans that were there.
I love the fact that you brought up kind of what his fate would be if the soldiers and the Burgish people knew that he was a wolf, because you're completely right. Knowing that, finding out that Darius is a wolf in this episode, and then going back to episode 2 where Philo visits him, he's still alive.
Yeah.
And that's kind of bonkers to me, because I would assume that no person who obviously is not like Philo, but no person would have any sympathy to any type of creature, or critch as the show calls them, you know?
Yeah.
I would think there'd be no sympathy there. Even if you served with them, even if you grew up with them, even if they were your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, your lover, whoever, I would think as soon as they found out you are some type of creature, boom, you're done. You're killed. You're whatever.
And I wonder if that means, it honestly was pretty comforting to me to know that he would survive everything that was happening to him when it came to the wolf attack, when it then came to him dealing with being a werewolf. But I wonder at which point in the timeline was it after the Pact finished invading the lands that he got caught, and therefore it wasn't seen as like illegal, because technically there were other critch around that were not illegal to be around. It just makes me really curious as to, and I think we'll probably end up seeing it by the end of the series, or at least the end of the season, of like what happened in between those times. And I'm confident, because they do end up going back and forth in the timeline a lot, and I want to see more of this part of the timeline. It was so beautiful and so tragic at the same time, because you know where these characters are ending up. You know that Philo just like, the end, I don't even want to talk about it yet, just because it just like made me just,
we'll wait.
Yeah, I'm just so curious to see what happened with him, with Darius, going forward in life, like alongside of Philo after they had to flee this town.
No, it makes complete sense. I feel like what you just said kind of cleared up some of the speculation I had of like, you're right. If I assume that they found out about Darius once he got back to the Burg, because he doesn't have forests to roam around in, he doesn't have all of the open space to kind of be hidden. You know, I feel like someone would see him because it's inhabited by so many people. So in that sense, that's probably where he got found out. At least that's what I think. And then, you know, like you were saying, Vito, the Burg, there are people in the Burg. There are people on Carnival Row that it's not illegal for them to be there. So yeah, maybe he's there, but he just has no relationships with anyone. They all severed ties, even though they served by him because of what he is now. It
also makes me wonder if there's any other character that we don't know of yet that was in the army that they had something happen to them, or they were halflings, because it's so obvious that there are a lot of hidden halflings just among society. If I think there are, I speculate that there are, because maybe that's the point of Philo's character, is that he might be one of the only halflings, and that's why we're seeing him. But I almost hope that there are more halflings otherwise, because I think having that community and being able to then show them, like, come out and be like, look, we're all halflings now too, and now it's okay, or something like that by the end of this. I would love that, but I don't know. This series is a little grungy for me to think that it's going to end up with any happy ending.
But what else was very beautiful about this storyline was I liked to see that it looked like Darius harbored no resentment to anything that, you know, to any of the cards that life dealt him, or to Philo. Like, you know, when they were having that touching conversation in the forest after Philo found him, he's basically saying, I'm free, I feel free, and all this stuff. But he doesn't seem to harbor any resentment toward Philo, in the sense that, you know, this is a wolf is a very visual type of creature. It's also a very painful type of creature. Side note, if anyone was to ask me, hey Veronica, what kind of mythical creature would you want to be? I don't think I would ever say wolf, because in every adaptation I've seen, wolves always seem to have it the hardest.
That transformation looks so, just the immediate, just he felt it and just threw up. Oh my gosh. And then the bones cracking into place. I think it's honestly amazing that they were able to put in those visual effects. I still, oh my gosh, I commend all of the visual effects and just all of the visual style that Carnival Row has to offer. And even though it's gruesome to watch, it was a pretty cool transformation.
It was pretty intense. But you know, Philo has it lucky in the sense that he appears completely human. It's only if anyone were to see the scars on his back that they would maybe start to speculate what's up with this guy. Is he some type of half-blood? Who is he? But like I said with Darius, his you know, transformation is very visual, so there's really nowhere for him to hide. But I love the fact that he's not resentful of Philo kind of being able to live a passing life and he can't anymore.
That also makes me wonder two specific things. What happens when the full moon comes out for Darius being in that jail cell? Does he just turn into a wolf right there? And on top of that, I had a realization that there was one time in the series so far where Philo's actually been questioned about those scars, and it was specifically with Aphissa. It was the landlady, and again, I'm so glad that we actually got resolution to that. But I just wonder if he's ever going to be comfortable talking about it, or if he's ever going to be outward with it. You don't think so?
No.
Why?
I think he's just too afraid. We can get into that a little bit later because I have some theories about that came out through the relationship that we saw. But I just kind of want to finish up with Darius and the Pact. So we kind of learn about Darius, but then we also get a little backstory on the Pact, and they're basically like super powered wolves because now they're finding ways to force a transformation by injecting serum into their soldiers.
It makes me really curious to find out what their stance is on the existence of the Critch, because I thought from this point up until this point, I thought that they were totally anti-Critch. That they were like, everybody who has anything magical with them dies. Oh, thank you, Ivan, by the way, for saying Portia. I must have missaid
I was going to say,
sorry.
When she was asking about his thing, his marks, and he was like, I got them in the war.
Yeah, I meant Portia. Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Ivan Soda. And thank you also to Channels in the chat, and thank you also to Cats2079. Thank you guys for sticking around. But anyway, I just really am interested to think about like why the Pact is doing what they're doing besides just like colonizing the area. What is their like ulterior motives? Because I always associated the Pact with anti-magic, but it seems like that might not be the case because obviously they had soldiers injecting themselves with a serum to become werewolves. But also maybe that was just like, I don't know, like a suicide mission, basically. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
It's kind of hard because I feel like this is really the only thing we really see from the Pact. It's kind of really not even a motivation, but it's really just the only thing that we see. And so it's kind of hard to kind of see what they were going for.
Besides destruction with the Zeppelins. I mean, that was just like, we want this position, that's it. We're going to blow it up until you leave.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's just to drive out anybody. Maybe it's just to show like, hey, anyone can be part of the Pact kind of thing. Maybe it's just used as a scare tactic. I'm really not sure.
I don't know, but I'm excited to see more of the Pact. And if we haven't seen the Pact in modern, quote unquote, in present day. Yeah. We haven't seen anything about them, and I know we're going to. I almost have a feeling, and this is like a little bit of a prediction, but I don't know, that eventually the Pact is going to come to Carnival Row. And I don't know how, I don't know when, but I have a feeling that it's going to happen and that we're going to see war in Carnival Row. But I don't know. Well, I guess we'll see going forward.
I guess we will see.
It's funny because I know you kind of know the answer to this probably already, but I definitely don't.
And I won't say anything. Now, I would love to go on to the relationship because we got a lot of romance this episode, and you want to know what else offers romance, Vito? AfterBuzz TV, because in case for everyone out there on YouTube and iTunes, we just want to say thank you so much for helping AfterBuzz TV be the ESPN of TV talk. We would love if you could subscribe to our channel and get involved in the conversation, leave us comments, let us know how you are liking our show. It really truly means so much to us. And if you're listening on iTunes, give us a 5-star rating because 1 through 4 don't work. We've already gotten a couple of 5-star ratings so thank you to everyone who is listening to us there. And like we said, there's so much AfterBuzz AfterBuzz TV has to offer is dramas, superhero fantasy, and romances, and we even just created AfterBuzz TV Latino. So if we don't have it, we will make it because we know there is an audience who wants it. So thank you so much for all of your support. And stay involved in the conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much. And speaking of which, I do want to say something real quick. So over the past 2-3 episodes now, and I want to apologize to Ivan specifically for this, for pointing it out, there are a few terms used in this series that are, as we find out throughout the rest of the series, in the universe that they are in, racial terms. For it's, I don't even need to say them, but we said last time for the fawn that they the like racial, like the derogatory term for them were pucks, and we're going to try very hard not to use them. The only reason that I have been using them is because that is the most frequently used word for them, and I actually did not know.
It's also a frequently used term when you research fawns as well. Like, that's kind of the word that comes up.
Absolutely.
It is often a lot to refer in context on the show, so...
Absolutely, and furthermore, Faye instead of Critch was one that Ivan brought up because Critch is technically also a derogatory term in that sense. So we'll try our best. Thank you guys for being patient with us, and I'm sorry that we brought it up in the first place, but I'm glad to continue on with that knowledge. So...
Take it away with the relationships.
Absolutely.
All right. This was fun. I liked getting to learn a little bit about their backstory. And the reason I really loved it was because I think more than anything, more than Philo, I think this episode really proved and showed to us, gave us, it helped us better establish Vignette's foundation as a character. It helped better establish her motivations. Because I remember us discussing around episodes 1 and 2, why didn't she just leave Turnanock when she had the chance, like Tourmaline or anybody else, but she stayed behind to help all the other Fae. And I think, after seeing how she's a steward of the library, I feel like she has a really good sense of justice, serving and protecting.
Absolutely.
And kind of knowing how Philo also has that mission. She was probably... serving in that sense as well. I
agree, and it was also nice to see her previous relationships. We actually got a confirmation that her and Tourmaline were previously in a relationship, meaning we have a bisexual fae in the group. But I just found that really interesting to see her previous relationships kind of revealed on screen, and it actually made me think about Tourmaline's current mindset with everything that's going on between kind of the love triangle that is Tourmaline, Philo, and Vignette. I was just going to say, I think Tourmaline, and I think Vignette too, I think those two will always love each other, whether it's romantic or whether it's platonic. And I love to see female relationships in shows where the characters empower each other. Absolutely.
And support each other.
I really, really do like their relationship, because at the end of the day, you can see that they just want the best for each other.
They do.
And even when oh my gosh, my brain just fizzled out. Even when they had to leave, even when everybody was evacuating, you could see that Tourmaline really knew what was going to be best in this situation. She had to flee, and she did have to leave behind Vignette in this case, but she found herself and Vignette strong enough to be able to go, yeah, we're going to see each other. I don't know how, I don't know why, and it was true. It was absolutely true that they were going to be able to see each other sometime in the future because they trusted each other that much. And even if this halfling Philo ends up in between them, at the end of the day, there is a bond there that we will never be able to see the entirety of.
And it'll never be broken.
Absolutely. And I can't wait to see how that develops continuing on in the episode, because I am well invested into their friendship and how much they're going to end up kind of doing with each other and doing for each other. And what Philo is going to be in that group dynamic, because I know Tourmaline doesn't not like Philo. I mean, it's obvious
she's cautious of him very much because of how Vignette is so, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't even want to say, like, she's weak. When at the end of the episode, he's like, I was your weakness kind of thing. And I think it's because Vignette really does love Philo, and she's worried of that effect that he has on her. And I think that's why she like worries so much. But
yeah, and then when Vignette told Tourmaline, like, I found someone else, was that in this one?
Yeah, it's heartbreaking.
Oh my god, it was so sad. I just want them to be happy. I want all of them to be happy, and they can't.
That's not this show.
No, unfortunately.
I mean, I would like it too, but this show puts all the characters on edge
and in pain.
and in pain. When Philo asks Vignette to, you know, kind of repair the line after they had their whole awkward encounter, throat against, she loves like knives against throats, specifically his throat a lot.
I did notice that.
Yeah, that happens a lot in this series. What do you think this is? Do you think maybe this was a trust mechanism?
I think it was the fact that I think Philo saw kind of almost a loophole in the fact that he was there with the Burgish military and was like, I can use this to kind of get to know her better. And do you mean the knife or the line?
Line.
Yeah, I think it was basically his way of being able to be like, look, I know this particular Fae does not trust me, but I'm very interested to find out things about her. I know somebody that's going to be able to do this for us. And then, I mean, it ultimately works. It ultimately works in his favor in that end. And I think it did build trust between them because it showed her that he's not just a soldier that's going to treat her like dirt, like every other Burgish soldier probably has. He is somebody that is going to be there and trust her and give her power as much as she wants to be treated like she has power.
And I think she's kind of realized that based on the media that he consumes. And this might be really diving deep into it, but obviously the story is about, you know, a forbidden relationship. It's about, you know, a guy from Earth who falls in love with like a lunar goddess, basically Sailor Moon.
Yeah. Good call.
I love it.
Good call.
But it's, you know, it's a forbidden relationship. It's something that is not common. And I think she kind of saw that and was like, why would a Burgish soldier who clearly doesn't like any other, like someone who is different, why would they be enjoying this type of media? So I think that the fact that he opened up about that book and she was able to read that book, I think that also established trust.
I agree, and I found it so funny when her immediate reaction hearing the story of this book was, oh, that's a bunch of crap. But it was so obvious that that's what she reads. That's the type of stories she loves, even by showing that 7,000-year-old story that relates to that. And I just want to compliment Cara Delevingne real quick because I have heard some different things on her performances, but I love her performances.
I think it's great. Yeah.
I think her and Orlando Bloom's dynamic is so good. I agree with you, Channels, by the way. I saw you in chat compliment her. That's kind of what brought it up. But the development of their relationship is by no way not part of Orlando Bloom and Cara Delevingne being able to delve into these characters as much as they are. And the way that Cara developed Vignette's, like, all of her character going into her defense against this relationship, her defense against this man who's coming from foreign lands and like trying to be trustworthy. Obviously she shouldn't trust him, but she did that so beautifully, and I just really loved watching every second of her performance. Every time she interacted with Philo in this episode, I thought it was great.
She shined so bright. Just like I said, the kind of the back and forth with her character too, because we got to see her be loyal. We got to see her be kind of, you know, like I said, a justice warrior. We got to see her be blunt and be like, Philo, what's this relationship? You know, she did a lot, and I was very impressed with her performance. Yeah. So coming up next, now I want to get your opinion about this. So we had a sexy scene in this episode.
Yeah.
Did you feel like this was out of place?
Part of me, I think with the time skips, no, but I understand if people would feel it was. It was just obvious to me that they wanted to get that somewhere in the episode. I kind of have felt that most of the sexy scenes have been kind of ham-fisted in.
Just let's put it here.
Yeah, it's like, oh, they're gonna have sex. You get to watch it. Yay, everybody's happy. But like, I mean, I don't know. It was kind of, to me, it was a passive thing. It was like, yeah, like this was going to happen. I mean, I don't need to know it, but like that they wrote it in, so whatever.
Yeah, I figured, you know, we would be seeing this episode, especially because we are establishing their relationship. I think, you know, given the time skips, I think that's kind of what made it feel out of place because, you know, as an audience, we're watching 40 minutes. It kind of seems like this is happening every single day, these scenes, but they're not. They're happening over a span of months, maybe even years.
Yes.
So maybe this scene was a long time coming for the characters, but it just, to me, it felt so odd because, you know, they're in the middle of this scene where it's like, we got to go deliver blood and protect people in the other areas.
And they're like, oh, never mind. Let's have sex.
Yeah.
Let's. The thing that I did find kind of interesting out of that, though, was they did use it to like talk about their development of their relationship because, like, in the first sex scene, you can see her wings are like fluttering and all bright and lit up, and then in the second scene, like, obviously, there's a lot more on her mind because of Tourmaline.
I love that you brought that up because I was literally just about to say Tourmaline always kind of being the voice of reason with Vignette is, you know, is saying he might be a great guy, but what's going to happen when the war ends?
Absolutely, and I agree that she should be thinking about that to an extent. I really do wonder where it would have gone if they ended up fleeing together, though. But I guess we'll never find out there. Yeah, that's true.
Not a story like
they would die much sooner, maybe, but who's to say? I guess the decision of Philo to then I'm so glad that we got to see what Philo actually did when it came to, like, I'm glad we got to see it all unfold, basically, of Philo making the decision after Tourmaline kind of convinced him, like, you have to do this, and then him going off and being like, yeah, I do have to do this, and then picking the worst way possible to do it.
I was going to ask you, Vito, too, because, you know, she harbors so much resentment and holds a grudge because of how he lied to her, and, like, rightfully so. You know, she loved him, and this is the other storyline that made me love this episode. So the first one was Philo being a half-blood, and I love stories where the fans are just able to pick up on things. So obviously she has like beads on her headband, and they all represent very important things in her life. She gave him the bead of like her heart, and I love when writing is able to convince fans this is the most important thing of this character. Like, it's even more important and bigger than Philo and Vignette saying I love you to each other.
But I have a question.
Yeah.
Did she give it to him, or did he take it?
She gave it to him.
I thought it was ambiguous. It was hard to see because he kind of had his hand around it and brought it down. Wasn't that his hand? I don't know.
No, I cannot. No, I refuse to think that he took it. I firmly want to believe that she gave it to him.
Interesting.
To kind of show how serious she was.
Yeah.
And I think that's what triggered him to have to do what he had to do, because he realized her loyalty. He realized that she is so loyal. It's almost she's almost loyal to a fault, because she wouldn't have left him. If he hadn't gotten that, I think he wouldn't have understand how truly she loved him.
It was very sweet to see that. And I agree with you. It was just something it was something that was on my mind throughout this episode, because I saw that happen, and she did definitely, in my opinion, give the beads to him, but it was almost like I can't remember, wasn't it in that scene that he had his hands like on that? I don't know, but it's
I refuse to believe anything different.
That's okay. Okay, yeah, thank you, chat, that Vignette did give it to her. Sorry, I was misremembering. Chat. No, I mean, obviously I believe you. It's just like I wanted a confirmation. But I'm really happy to see that they were able to spend so much time together in this and be able to like live a little bit with each other before the war actually did tear them apart. I wasn't expecting it to be so quick at the end when everybody just evacuated and it was one step after another. You just saw the town tear apart, and then you saw what was it?
Fall apart.
Yeah, and then the Mima come and just, you don't even hear the dialogue. I love that in scenes when it's you just hear the music and just the sounds, the muddled sounds of war, and you don't even hear what's being said, but you just see Vignette just like break, just like go down into tears. They had to lift her and fly her away. I just I
want to give a shout out to Renji90998 in the chat, who's saying Tourmaline, I'm assuming, told Philo to break up with her, not tell someone that he's dead. This is an interesting concept, because I want to ask you, Vito, do you think it makes complete sense that Vignette would harbor resentment toward him because of what he did, but do you think he had another option?
I don't know, and I think out of kind of bias as like a man, I can kind of see that maybe he took it to an extreme, and like maybe he thought like, oh, this is the only way that I can do it. He kind of had that like hero complex about him almost in a way, and we've seen this through him before in the series of like the I'm gonna do this alone, I have to do this or else nobody else will do this. So I think maybe there might have been another option. This was just the one he took, though. So thinking about if there was any other option, like it's hard to say, because yeah, there are plenty of other ways he could have done it, but to him, this was the one that was going to separate him as much as possible, and he had no foresight on it. He was just like, this is what's going to get me out of the situation right now, and that's it.
I think, did he have another option? Possibly, but I think he had to make a spur-of-the-moment decision, and I think that was the only way he himself could feel reassured that Vignette would not follow him.
Absolutely.
But it was obviously a very tough decision.
I was so sad. I was like, you don't need to do it, Philo. You guys can definitely, if anybody's going to make it in this world, it's going to be Philo and Vignette. That's, yeah. Ugh.
Such a good episode, so much good context, so much good backstory, so many great we got, like I said, we even got to learn more about different creatures. And speaking of new creatures, it is time for Vito to take us down Mythical Row.
It's time to take a walk down a Mythical Row to our special segment. Everybody welcome, where I will give you all a brief history on a mythical creature introduced into the show. And this week, believe it or not, it's werewolves. So, thank you for that. Werewolves, or lycanthropes, are humans with the ability to shapeshift into a wolf, either purposefully or after being cursed, and especially on the night of a full moon, as we saw in this. It seems that they took an interpretation pretty much straight out of the books. There are a lot of different interpretations of werewolves. Early sources include Petronius from 27 to 66 AD, and Gervase of Tilbury from 1150 to 1228. We go back very far with the idea of just men inhabiting the bodies of wolves, even back to ancient Greek history, going through Roman history, going through basically the rest of the time from there. There's a lot more history on that when it comes to Greek history and everything, but to go a little forward, there were werewolf trials at some point in Switzerland, very similar but much smaller than the ones that we know of the witch trials. And there is also a note back to Greek mythology. Herodotus wrote that the Nuri, a tribe, were transformed into wolves once a year for several days back in ancient Greece. That was seen as something that was inherited from the gods, pretty much. But yeah, that's it for a walk down Mythical Row. Thank you for joining me.
Quick question. You don't have to go into too much detail, but in a lot of media we always, or at least I tend to see werewolves as a very painful curse. You know, it's a very painful transformation, and it's almost uncontrollable, unlike some other creatures. In your research, did you see that there were parallels, or some media took some liberties? I
think it's been a combination of both. Definitely in modern times, I think there have been more of an exploration of the actual transformation. But in general, it seems that in ancient history, it was much more of just like a magical, woo, you just turn into a wolf and then you turn back, kind of in ancient Greece. But definitely we see more specifically in modern history when it comes to movies and cinema, Werewolves of London, everything along the sorts. It's very much painful around there. I don't think anybody really cared much about the painfulness of it back then, before the 1500s probably. But anyway, funny enough, V, I also have some news for us to hear about this.
Do you?
Yes, I do, and it's actually about Cara Delevingne herself. I'm very excited.
AfterBuzz TV News.
So luckily, a lot of other people are kind of seeing some authenticity when it comes to Cara Delevingne's performances. Specifically, we can find from a news source called Irish Central, they talked about her development of her Irish accent for Carnival Row. She had apparently gone to Ireland and had spoken in her accent that she's using for the show, and people actually told her that they were they asked her specifically, let me pull up the quote real quick. One second. They asked her if she was from Dublin. They asked her legitimately if she was from Dublin, and nobody questioned her. Also, nobody really knew her in Ireland, so it was kind of easy for her to get away with going around and talking in this accent for a while. But she auditioned with both her English and Irish accent. She said apparently that was not required for her audition, but she decided to anyway.
I think that's... Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No,
I just think that's an example of, an actor really coming prepared and doing their research, because, correct me if I'm wrong, I am not 100% 100% certain about this, but I think some Fae do stem from like Celtic mythology.
Absolutely.
So the fact that she chose an Irish kind of Celtic accent, I think, was an extra added fun touch.
Absolutely. And one other note on that, apparently, according to a quote from Cara Delevingne, she says, Irish, in my opinion, is one of the most beautiful, and the way that they speak and the lyrical way of their words, it just made more sense for the kind of romantic creatures that fairies are. So that just felt extremely important to me. So I'm glad that this is such a close role to Cara's heart. It honestly shows, in my opinion, every single time that we hear her speak, every single time that we see her on screen.
Very consistent, too.
Absolutely.
Very great. Well, thank you for that.
Of course, you're welcome. That was our AfterBuzz TV news.
All right, guys, that about wraps it up for us here on the Carnival Row After Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Vito, where can the fans find you on social media?
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at vscutti. That's at vscutti. Thank you guys for sticking around.
I'm Veronica Valencia. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at itsme, Veronica_V. Thank you again so much for tuning in, and stay tuned for episode 4 coming up shortly.
It's coming up real short.
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.